Kawah Ijen is a volcano found in eastern Java, Indonesia. At night, it comes alive with blue fire as its sulfur deposits catch light. Tourists flock to the volcano to see the blue flames. This blue glow isn't real lava. The glow is actually the light from the combustion of sulfuric gases. Those gases emerge from cracks in the volcano at high pressure and temperature, up to 600 degrees Celsius. When they come in contact with the air, they ignite, sending flames up to 5 meters high. Some of the gases condense into liquid sulfur, which continues to burn as it flows down the slopes, giving the feeling of lava flowing. But the famous site has a darker side. Very few people know about the human story of that crater and the hardship and sacrifice that is happening there. The sulfur that creates the blue flames is also at the center of a thriving and backbreaking industry. Sulfur is a valuable commodity, used in a range of goods and processes. In Java, it is used in matches and to make sugar whiter, among other things. The molten sulfur is tapped from inside the rock using metal pipes that bring it to the surface, where it cools into a hard, yellow solid. The miners call this solid sulfur devil's gold. That's partly because of its color and because it is a source of income. But it also reflects the fact that those who rely on it for money pay a heavy price with their health. The miner's journey starts around midnight when they get on their motorbikes to ride to the volcano. The bikes can take them as far as the foot of the crater. From there, it's about a 2,800 meters hike up to the top. Then they descend down into the crater, avoiding lots of loose rocks and jagged stones. That's the beginning. The men break apart the solidified sulfur, hacking it into lumps the size of small boulders. They collect the sulfur in wicker baskets balanced on a pole across their shoulders. But as brutal as the work is, the most grueling part is the return journey. They have to carry more than their body weight back up the crater. The mining doesn't just take its toll on the men's backs and joints. The air is acrid and thick with noxious fumes, which form when sulfur reacts with oxygen and water. As you descend, you realize how toxic and harsh this environment actually is. Tourists visiting the area often wear gas masks to protect their airways, but most of the miners cannot afford masks, so they work with just a handkerchief or damp cloth to cover their noses and mouths. More than half of the miners suffer from pharyngitis, inflammation of the back of the throat, and a third experience respiratory diseases every month, as well as scars on their backs from carrying the heavy loads as shown here. The men often develop deformations of the spine and legs. The miners have difficulty getting treatment for the work-related health problems they develop. It is a long journey into hospital, meaning that basic medical care is sometimes impractical. Instead, the miners often retire early when their health fails. The area's younger men then have the added responsibility of supporting their fathers who are no longer able to work because of their health problems, as well as the rest of their families. The miners extract the sulfur rock, which is formed after the blue flames extinguish, leaving behind a solid sulfur-rich rock. They then carry these large loads in baskets down the side of the mountain to be paid per kilograms. Each load was 80 kilograms and I couldn't even lift it. The workers don't look like Rambos, but they can carry this weight on their shoulders up to the rim through a path that is actually closed for tourists because it is dangerous. Let's do the math. Sulfur miners are paid 1,000 rupiah per kilograms. They usually take 2 daily trips, 80 kilograms each trip, so they can bring max 160 kilograms per day. So max 160,000 rupiah per day, 11 USD. It is very little by European standards, but mining is one of the highest paid professions in the region, and the workers are well-respected members of their communities. But they bear the scars of years spent on the edge of life and death. The side effects are nothing less but severe burns, sore bodies, ongoing coughing, poisoned lungs, and squashed shoulder bones. Average life expectancy barely exceeds 50 years. But the money keeps them going, and when one has the opportunity, he saves up as much as he can, and after a few years opens a guest house and becomes a tour guide. Guide earns 250,000 rupiah per day. There used to be some agricultural jobs, but the pay was even lower. There are no other jobs in that area. There's a lot of pressure on the men for the income from mining to support their families. In most other parts of the world, sulfur mining doesn't take place at an active volcano site. More commonly, it's collected as a byproduct at oil fields. The process is highly mechanized and the heavy lifting is done by machines. Laborers at other sulfur mining sites, such as Canada's oil sands, have better access to adequate protection. About 98% of the world's sulfur comes from the oil and gas industry, and oil companies are required by law to process it safely. Today, the sulfur industry from oil and gas is worth almost $13 billion and is expected to keep growing. This has made natural mines in volcanoes virtually unnecessary, especially since mined sulfur is not as pure as the sulfur that is a byproduct of refining. The miners of Ijen want to be the last generation to mine sulfur by hand here. They say they want to earn enough money to send their children to school, to give them other options besides sulfur mining. The work is really hard, but the men often say that it is a sacrifice they are willing to make for their families, specifically for their sons. They wanted their sons to be the first generation that didn't have to go through what they went through. From where comes the sulfur? As the burning gas is cooled, they deposit sulfur around the lake. To speed up the formation of the mineral, a mining company installed ceramic pipes on an active vent near the edge of the lake. The pipes route the sulfur gases down the vent's sloping mound. When the gas is cool, they condense into liquid sulfur, which then flows or drips from the pipes and solidifies in a few minutes into hard sulfur mats. After the solid sulfur cools, the miners break it up and haul it off the mountain on their backs. Another possible reason the mine is still open is tourism. Considered a form of cultural heritage tourism, mine tours can be found around the world from Africa to Australia. Unlike Mount Ijen, few are still active, and many have been museumified. Some researchers propose tourists are attracted to these sites because they elicit what philosophers have termed the sublime, a feeling of pleasure in seeing a dangerous but awe-inspiring object, like a violent act of nature. During the high season, the mountain can see more than 1,000 tourists per day. They often ask the miners to pose for photographs in exchange for small tips, which critics argue is a form of poverty tourism, the commodification of human suffering. Tourists seem to relish narrating their tales of survival in apparently dangerous situations, an attitude not unlike that found towards other potentially hazardous recreations and extreme sports. On the other hand, tourism can also be a powerful tool for economic development and expose unfavorable working conditions, regardless of motivations for visiting. The tourism industry in East Java at large employs an estimated 200,000 people. Mining is one of the highest paid professions in the region, and the workers are well-respected members of their communities. Many pride themselves on their physical fitness and role in attracting visitors to the island. The future of Mount Ijen as a tourist and mining site, however, is unclear. Indonesia is situated on the Ring of Fire, a 25,000-mile seismically active belt of volcanoes and tectonic plate boundaries that frame the Pacific Basin. It is estimated that 75% of all active volcanoes and 90% of earthquakes worldwide occur in this region. About 5 million Indonesians live and work near active volcanoes, where farming soil is most fertile. Java alone is home to 141 million people, one of the most densely populated islands on Earth. The most significant recorded eruption of Ijen occurred in 1817, when a series of violent explosions persisted for several weeks. According to eyewitness accounts, the ash was thick enough to block the sun, the release of acid-contaminated watersheds, and debris-flattened bamboo huts. Today, Indonesian and international scientists continuously monitor volcanic activity and are trying to find ways to mitigate future hazards. Not only are nearby communities under threat from earthquakes and explosive gas-charged magma, the release of the acid lake could be catastrophic. In March 2018, hundreds of people surrounding Mount Ijen were forced to evacuate their homes, and 30 were hospitalized after the volcano spewed toxic gases. Because of this incident, the public, tourists or miners, are not allowed near the crater until further notice. It's not the first time the volcano has been closed to visitors, and unlikely the last, but even from afar, Mount Ijen's smoldering crater, toxic, beautiful, indomitable, is a remarkable sight.